I never thought I'd be the type of person to snoop through my husband's office. 32 years of marriage had given me complete trust in Nate. Or maybe I was just naive. My name is Marley, and until last Tuesday, I was living what I thought was a perfect life. Nate and I had built our plastic surgery clinic from nothing into one of Boston's most prestigious medical facilities. We had everything: respect, wealth, and what I believed was an unshakable partnership. The drawer wasn't even hidden well. I was looking for some insurance paperwork when I noticed the slight gap behind his filing cabinet. A gentle pull revealed a shallow drawer, perfectly concealed unless you were standing at just the right angle. Inside, a stack of letters tied with a pink ribbon sat next to a small velvet box. My hands trembled as I pulled out the first letter. The paper was expensive, the kind that costs more than most people spend on dinner. The handwriting was flowing, feminine, and somehow mocking. "My dearest Nate," it began. "Last night was magical. I can't stop thinking about your hands." I couldn't read anymore. The date at the top was from 3 months ago. 3 months of living my life, sleeping next to my husband, while he was... "Dr. Brooks?" Sarah, our receptionist, knocked on the door. "The Henderson meeting starts in 5 minutes. "I'll be right there," I called back, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. I carefully replaced everything exactly as I'd found it. Muscle memory from years of precision in running our business taking over while my mind spun out of control. The Henderson meeting. Right. We were supposed to be discussing acquiring their smaller clinic, expanding our practice. Nate would be there, probably sitting next to Elle Monroe, his new assistant. Elle, with her perfect 20-something face, and that flowing handwriting I now recognized from countless memos. I walked into the conference room like nothing was wrong, like I hadn't just discovered that my entire life was built on quicksand. Nate sat at the head of the table, exactly where I expected him to be. Elle was indeed beside him, her tablet ready to take notes. "Marley, sweetheart." Nate smiled at me, the same smile that had won me over in medical school. We were just getting started. I took my seat across from Elle, watching as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Her nails were painted pale pink, matching the ribbon that had bound her letters. The velvet box in the drawer suddenly made horrible sense. I'd seen her admiring a pair of diamond earrings in the window of Tiffany's last month when we'd all gone to lunch together. "The Henderson acquisition," I began, opening my laptop, "represents a significant opportunity for expansion." My voice was clinical, professional. Inside, I was screaming. "Their patient base is exactly what we're looking for," Nate added, leaning forward. "Young, affluent, image-conscious." His eyes flickered to Elle for just a moment too long. The meeting continued, but I was barely present. Instead, I was counting backwards, remembering small moments that suddenly made sense. The late nights at the office. The new cologne. The way he'd started wearing the expensive suits I'd always hated. "I think we should move forward," I heard myself say as the meeting wrapped up. "But I'd like to review the financials one more time." "Always the careful one," Nate laughed, but there was something tight in his expression. "Elle, could you pull those numbers together?" "Of course, Dr. Brooks," she smiled, all perfect teeth and practiced professionalism. I watched them leave together, their shoulders not quite touching. The Henderson acquisition would take months to complete. Months of meetings, planning, and pretending I didn't know what I knew. But that was fine, because now I had time to plan too. I pulled out my phone and called my sister Clara. "Hey," I said when she answered. "Remember when you said I worked too hard? I think it's time I started paying more attention to what's happening in my own house." Clara's house always smelled like cinnamon and disappointment. As I sat at her kitchen counter, watching her methodically wipe already clean surfaces, I could tell she was processing what I'd just told her about Nate and Elle. "Are you absolutely sure?" she finally asked, folding her dishcloth into perfect quarters. "I mean, Nate's always been friendly with his staff. Friendly doesn't usually involve love letters and jewelry from Tiffany's," I replied, my fingers tightening around my untouched coffee mug. Clara sighed, leaning against her pristine countertop. "Have you confronted him?" "Not yet. I need to understand exactly what I'm dealing with first." I pulled out my phone, showing her the photos I'd taken of the clinic's recent financial statements. "Look at these transfers. Every month for the past 6 months, significant amounts moving to an account I've never seen before." "Oh, Marley." Clara's face softened with pity, and something else. "Was that relief?" "I should tell you. I saw them together last month, at that new wine bar downtown. I thought it was just a work thing, but..." "But what?" My voice came out sharper than intended. "The way he looked at her. I've seen that look before. Clara's hands twisted the dishcloth. Richard used to look at his secretary that way before. I'd almost forgotten about Clara's own brush with infidelity 5 years ago. She'd fought to save her marriage, convinced Richard to go to counseling. Now they lived in this perfect house with its perfect kitchen, pretending everything was perfect. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Because Nate's been good to this family. He paid for Mom's care facility. He got Jamie that gallery showing. Clara trailed off, looking guilty. I thought maybe I was seeing things that weren't there. The mention of Jamie made my chest tight. Our godson worshipped Nate, saw him as the father figure he'd never had. This would destroy him. Speaking of Jamie, Clara continued, clearly eager to change the subject. He's having another showing next week. Nate and Elle are handling the clinic's sponsorship. What? The coffee mug slipped from my hands, shattering on the immaculate floor. Dark liquid spread across the white tiles like a stain. I'm sorry, I thought you knew. Elle's been coordinating everything with the gallery. She seems very invested in Jamie's career. Of course she was. Jamie was young, talented, and connected to our family. Another stepping stone for her ambitions. As Clara rushed to clean up the mess, her phone buzzed on the counter. I caught a glimpse of the screen, a message from Nate. Need to talk about Marley. You're still in contact with him? I stood up, suddenly feeling like I couldn't breathe in this perfect kitchen with its perfect lies. He's worried about you, Clara defended, quickly turning her phone face down. He says you've been distant, working late, checking the accounts obsessively. So I'm the problem? I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. My husband is having an affair with a woman half his age, stealing from our clinic, and I'm the one everyone's worried about? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Clara? Because it sounds like you're choosing his side. I'm not choosing sides. Clara's composure finally cracked. But someone has to think about the bigger picture. The clinic employs dozens of people. Jamie's career is just taking off. If this becomes public, it will be because of Nate's choices, not mine. I grabbed my purse, heading for the door. And by the way, Richard is still seeing his secretary. I saw them last week at the Four Seasons. But I'm sure your perfect marriage can survive another round of counseling. I left Clara standing in her perfect kitchen, surrounded by coffee stains and shattered illusions. As I drove home, my phone lit up with messages. One from Clara begging me to come back, one from Jamie about the upcoming show, and one from an unknown number. It was a photo of Nate and Elle, clearly taken recently, entering a jewelry store together. The caption read, "Thought you should know. Emily Chun, Radiant Transformations." Well, wasn't that interesting? Emily Chen's office at Radiant Transformations was everything our clinic wasn't: modern, minimalist, and intimidating. I sat across from her, studying the woman who'd sent me that photo of Nate and Elle. "I've been watching your clinic's financial reports," Emily said, sliding a folder across her glass desk. "They make for interesting reading." I opened the folder, my stomach dropping at what I saw. Bank statements, transfer records, property listings, all connecting Nate to a beachfront condo in Miami. The down payment had come from our clinic's accounts. "How did you get these?" Emily's smile was razor-sharp. "Let's just say Elle isn't as loyal to Nate as he thinks. She's been keeping her options open." Of course she had. I thought about the way Elle had been handling Jamie's gallery showing, positioning herself at the center of our social circle. She wasn't just after Nate, she was after everything. Why show me this? Because I respect you, Marley. And because I'm about to make you an offer. Emily leaned forward. "Merge your clinic with mine. We'll force Nate out, restructure under the Radiant brand. You'll have complete control of operations." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Jamie. "Emergency at the gallery. Need you both here now. I have to go." I stood up, clutching the folder. But we're not done talking about this. The gallery was chaos when I arrived. Water was pouring from the ceiling, threatening Jamie's newest collection. Nate was already there, directing people like he was in surgery. Elle stood nearby, filming everything on her phone. "The sprinklers just went off," Jamie explained, his face pale. "Insurance won't cover water damage because the gallery missed an inspection." "How convenient," I muttered, watching Elle tap away at her phone. She'd been handling the gallery's paperwork, including insurance renewals. Nate appeared at my side, too close. "We need to talk about the Henderson acquisition. Now!" I stepped back, my hand tightening on Emily's folder. "The numbers don't add up," he said quietly. "You've been looking into accounts you shouldn't be accessing. Like the ones funding your Miami love nest?" His face went blank, That perfect surgeon's mask he wore when things went wrong in the operating room. Who told you about Miami? Does it matter? What matters is you're stealing from our clinic to build a new life with her. I nodded toward Elle, who was now comforting Jamie with practiced concern. It's not what you think. Really. Because I think you're having a midlife crisis that's going to destroy everything we've built. I think you're so scared of becoming irrelevant that you're willing to throw away 32 years of marriage for someone who's using you to climb the social ladder. Keep your voice down, he hissed, grabbing my arm. I yanked away, but not before Jamie noticed the tension. He started walking toward us, concern etched on his face. Everything okay over here? Fine, Nate said smoothly. Just discussing some clinic business. Actually, I pulled out my phone, pulling up the transfer records. Why don't you take a look at this business, Jamie? Since you're about to lose your gallery showing thanks to your godfather's girlfriend's oversight with the insurance. Elle's head snapped up at that, her carefully constructed mask slipping for just a moment. Jamie looked between us, confusion turning to understanding. What's she talking about, Uncle Nate? But Nate was staring at the phone in my hand, at the evidence of his betrayal. You'll destroy everything, he said softly. The clinic, our reputation, Jamie's career. No, I corrected him. You've already done that. I'm just deciding whether to let you keep pretending otherwise. I walked out of the gallery, leaving Jamie's questions and Elle's calculated concern behind. My phone buzzed again, Emily Chun. My offer stands. But now I'm adding a condition. Full audit of all clinic finances made public. Your move. I thought about Clara's perfect kitchen, about Jamie's ruined artwork, about the way Nate's hands had shaken when he saw those bank statements. Then I thought about the Miami condo, waiting for its new occupants. I texted back one word. Deal. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about forcing them to face exactly who they've become. Jamie's studio apartment was his sanctuary, filled with half-finished canvases and the smell of turpentine. I sat on his paint-splattered couch, watching him process everything I'd just told him about Nate, Elle, and the clinic. I should have seen it, he said finally, putting down his brush. The canvas in front of him showed a woman's face, fractured into pieces. I recognized my own features, distorted by his artistic vision. Elle kept asking questions about the family, about the clinic's history. I thought she was just being friendly. We all did. I picked up one of his sketches. Elle's face, captured in perfect detail. She's good at making people see what they want to see. Uncle Nate helped me get my first showing. Jamie's voice cracked slightly. Everything I have was earned by your talent. I cut him off. Nate may have opened some doors, but you walked through them on your own merit. Jamie's phone buzzed, a text from Elle. He showed me the screen. Need to talk about the insurance situation. Have a solution. Dinner tonight. She's trying to damage control, I said. The question is why? What does she get from keeping you on her side? Jamie started pacing, leaving paint-stained footprints on his wooden floor. There's something else. Elle's been asking about the Henderson acquisition, specifically about the property deeds. My blood ran cold. What about them? She wanted to know if they were in the clinic's name or, he hesitated, or in yours personally, since you inherited the building from your grandmother. The pieces clicked into place. The Henderson property was the only major clinic asset solely in my name. If Nate and Elle managed to push me out before the merger. My phone rang, Emily Chun. The audit revealed something interesting, she said without preamble. Your husband's been meeting with Henderson's board behind your back. They're voting tomorrow on a direct sale to him, bypassing you completely. I ended the call, my hands shaking. Jamie, I need you to do something for me. Keep that dinner with Elle. Find out everything you can about their plans for Henderson. You want me to spy on them? His face showed conflict, the idealistic artist wrestling with harsh reality. I want you to protect your future. Because if they get control of Henderson, your gallery space goes with it. Jamie's expression hardened. I'll do it. But promise me something? Don't let this turn you into someone you're not. I looked at his painting of my fractured face. Maybe I'm already someone different. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Later that night, Jamie called. His voice was tight with anger. I let something slip. They're planning to announce the Henderson deal at my gallery opening next week. She said it would be poetic. The old guard making way for the new. In front of all our friends and colleagues, I said quietly. Maximum humiliation. There's more. She showed me the property transfer papers. They're already drawn up, just waiting for signatures. I cannot. He's using my show to legitimize their relationship. To make it seem like the family approves. I thought about Emily's offer, about Clara's warnings, about 32 years of building something just to watch it be stolen by calculated innocence and practiced charm. Jamie, I said carefully, how would you feel about moving your show to Radiant Transformations Gallery space? Dr. Chun has been looking for ways to support local artists. The silence stretched for a moment. You're going to war, aren't you? No, I corrected him. I'm going to teach them about consequences. There's a difference. After hanging up, I opened my email and found what I'd been dreading, an invitation to a pre-show dinner at Nate and Elle's new condo. The Miami property I wasn't supposed to know about. I typed 2 responses, one accepting the dinner invitation, the other to Emily Chin, start the audit, and make sure the results reach the Henderson board before tomorrow's vote. Sometimes the hardest part isn't deciding to fight back. It's realizing that the person you're fighting isn't who you thought they were, and neither are you. The Miami condo was exactly what I expected, all glass and modern angles, designed to make its occupants feel important. I sat at the dining table while Elle played hostess, serving wine with practiced grace. Nate watched her move around the kitchen like a proud collector admiring his latest acquisition. The Henderson board was quite impressed with our proposal, Elle said, setting down a plate of something artfully arranged. Especially the part about modernizing their approach. Modernizing. I took a sip of wine, noting how Nate's hand tightened around his glass. Is that what we're calling it? The clinic needs to evolve, Nate said. You've always been resistant to change. The door buzzed, Jamie arriving late as planned. Elle rushed to let him in, leaving Nate and me alone for a moment. Did you really think I wouldn't find out about the board vote? I asked quietly. Before he could answer, my phone lit up with an email from Emily Chin. The subject line made my heart race. Audit complete, urgent. Jamie entered with Elle, his face tight with something more than artistic temperament. He'd seen the results too. Uncle Nate, Jamie's voice was carefully controlled. Elle mentioned you're planning to announce the Henderson deal at my show? We thought it would be perfect. Elle touched Jamie's arm. A celebration of new beginnings. My phone buzzed again, Clara this time. Emergency at Henderson. Board meeting canceled. Call me. Speaking of celebrations, I set down my wine glass. How long have you been falsifying patient records, Nate? The room went silent. Elle's perfect hostess smile flickered. The audit found some interesting patterns, I continued. Procedures that never happened, insurance claims for ghost patients. All tied to that account in Miami. You had no right, Nate started. I had every right. I'm still your wife, still co-owner of the clinic. Though I suppose that's why you needed the Henderson deal so badly. Can't hide fraud if your wife has access to the books. Elle moved toward Nate, but Jamie caught her arm. Don't, he said. Show her. Elle's facade cracked. She pulled out her phone, handed it to me. On the screen was an email chain between her and someone at the medical board. She'd been gathering evidence for months. Insurance fraud is a federal crime, she said softly. The board would have to revoke his license. Unless I sign over my share of Henderson, I finished. And the clinic. It's not personal. Elle's voice had lost its practiced charm. It's just business. I looked at Nate, really looked at him. The man I'd loved for 32 years was gone, replaced by someone desperate and small. You knew about this? I asked him. Elle understands what needs to be done, he said. The clinic is my legacy. I can't let it become obsolete. My phone buzzed one final time, Emily Chin again. Henderson board saw the audit. They're calling an emergency meeting. Tomorrow morning. Your move. I stood up, my decision made. Jamie, would you mind giving me a ride? I think I've lost my appetite. Marley. Nate called as I reached the door. Think about what you're doing. One phone call from Elle, and everything we built. Everything we built. I turned back. No, Nate. Ibuil this. While you were chasing youth and validation, I kept our clinic running. And now you and your protégé think you can blackmail me with evidence she gathered while sleeping with my husband. Elle flinched. Jamie moved to my side, his artist's hands steady on my shoulder. The Henderson board meets tomorrow, I said. They'll have the full audit, including Elle's evidence. But they'll also have proof of who really committed the fraud. Check your email, Elle. Emily Chin sends her regards. I left them in their perfect condo with its perfect view, knowing tomorrow would change everything. In the car, Jamie finally spoke. What happens now? Now! I watched Miami's lights blur past. Now we see who's really been playing who. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone's future. It's about forcing them to face their past. The Henderson board meeting never happened. Instead, I found myself in the emergency room at 3 a.m, watching doctors will Nate into surgery. Apparently, stress and cocaine don't mix well with a man his age. He had a minor heart attack, the doctor explained. We found significant amounts of stimulants in his system. Elle sat across the waiting room, her perfect makeup smeared with tears that looked almost genuine. Clara paced between us like a referee at a boxing match. Did you know? Clara asked me quietly. About the drugs? I shook my head. 32 years of marriage, and I'd missed the signs. Or maybe I'd chosen not to see them. My phone buzzed. Emily Chun. Henderson Board saw the toxicology report. They're pulling out completely. I'm sorry, Marley. Another buzz, Jamie. Elle's been talking to reporters. Check the local news sites. The headlines were already appearing. Prominent surgeon's drug crisis. Brooks Clinic under investigation. Each one carefully crafted to suggest widespread problems, not just one man's desperate choices. He'll lose his license, Elle said suddenly. Even without the fraud, this is enough. Isn't that what you wanted? I asked. To destroy him so completely that taking over would be easy? I wanted. Elle's voice cracked. I never thought he'd actually. The doctor returned before she could finish. He's asking for you, Mrs. Brooks. And he's not entirely coherent. I found Nate looking small in his hospital bed, tubes snaking from his arms. His surgeon's hands, once so steady, trembled as he reached for me. I couldn't let it end, he whispered. The clinic, our legacy. I couldn't become irrelevant. So you chose cocaine and a 24-year-old instead? Elle understood. She really saw me. Not just as. He gestured weakly at himself, this aging man trying to hold on to something. No, I said quietly. She saw an opportunity. Just like she saw one in Jamie's gallery, in the Henderson deal, in every careful step she took to position herself. The audit, he closed his eyes. How bad? Bad enough that our insurance won't cover this hospital stay. The fraud investigation freezes everything. His monitors beeped faster. There's a safe in the Miami condo. Behind the Rothko print. Everything you need to prove it was all me. None of it touched the clinic's legitimate accounts. You're confessing? I'm trying to save what's left. For you. For Jamie. He laughed bitterly. Elle's probably already planning her next move. As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. A video link from Clara. Elle giving an interview outside the hospital. Tears perfectly falling as she described her deep concern for her mentor and her hopes of maintaining the clinic's sterling reputation during this transition. She's good, I admitted. Better than we gave her credit for. Marley. Nate's voice was fading. The safe. The combination. But his eyes were closing, the medication pulling him under. I watched him slip into sleep, this man I'd loved and built a life with, now reduced to hospital monitors and whispered confessions. Outside, Clara waited with coffee and hard truth. The medical board meets tomorrow. Emily Chin says without access to that safe, there's no way to prove the clinic wasn't involved in his fraud. Or that Elle wasn't behind it all, I added. So what now? I looked through the hospital window at Elle, still performing for the cameras. At Jamie arriving with his worried artist's soul. At my phone lighting up with Emily Chen's latest update about the Henderson deal falling apart. Now, I said, we break into a Miami condo. Clara's eyes widened. That's insane. It's illegal. So is fraud. So is conspiracy. So is watching everything we built burn because we played by the rules while they didn't. Sometimes hitting bottom isn't about losing everything. It's about realizing what you're willing to do to get it back. Call Jamie, I told Clara. Tell him to bring his lockpicks. And whatever you do, don't let Elle know we're gone. Breaking into the Miami condo was surprisingly easy. What we didn't expect was to find Elle already there, standing in front of the Rothko print, safe door wide open. I wondered how long it would take you to come, she said, not turning around. The combination was his surgery license number. Predictable, really. Jamie's lockpicks were still in his hand. Clara stood frozen in the doorway. I stepped forward, taking in the scattered papers and empty safe. Where are the documents? I asked. You mean these? Elle held up a USB drive. Everything's here. The fraud, the fake patients, the drug purchases. But also this. She tossed me a small notebook. My insurance policy. The notebook was filled with Nate's handwriting. Detailed accounts of every illegal procedure, every under-the-table deal. Spanning years before Elle ever arrived. He's been doing this for a decade, Elle said. I just made it organized. Efficient. You documented everything. Understanding dawned. You were never after Nate. You were after the clinic. The clinic. Elle laughed, but it wasn't her usual practiced sound. I wanted what you had. the respect, the power to build something lasting. Nate was just convenient. Elle, Jamie stepped forward. This isn't you. The person I knew. The person you knew was a character I played. Elle est composure craquée. Poor little artist's assistant, so eager to learn, so grateful for every opportunity. Do you know what it's like to be invisible? To have talent but no connections. Actually, I held up the notebook. I do. First female clinic manager in Boston. Every bank turned me down for loans. Nate's name opened doors, but I built everything else. Then you understand. Elle's voice softened. Help me take over the clinic. With your experience, my ambition. No. I cut her off. Because you're still playing characters. Still trying to be someone else instead of building something real. Elle's hand tightened around the USB drive. One call to the medical board. Won't matter, Clara spoke up. Because while you were here, getting your insurance policy, I was at the hospital getting Nate's confession on video. Complete with details about how you helped organize the fraud. Elle's perfect mask slipped completely. You're lying. Check your phone, I suggested. The video's probably trending by now. Emily Chun has excellent media contacts. Jamie moved to the windows as police lights began flashing outside. They're here. You called the police? Elle looked betrayed. After everything I could give you? No, I said quietly. You called them yourself. Check your sent emails. Elle grabbed her phone, face paling as she saw the confession and evidence she'd apparently sent to the medical board an hour ago. How? You're not the only one who knows how to play a role, Jamie said. Those drinks we had last week. When I was considering your offer to manage my career. You should really lock your phone when you go to the bathroom. The police were at the door now. Elle looked around wildly, like a trapped animal. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to hand over that USB drive. The police will find evidence of Nate's fraud, but also proof that you tried to stop it. You'll be the whistleblower who helped expose everything. Why would you protect me? Because revenge isn't about destruction. It's about making things right. I held out my hand. Your choice, Elle. Keep playing characters or start building something real. For a moment, I saw her clearly, not the manipulative seductress or the ambitious protégé, but a young woman desperate to matter. Just like I'd been once. The police knocked. Elle handed me the drive. What happens now? She whispered. Now you do what I did 30 years ago. Start over. Build something that's actually yours. I smiled. Maybe start with some art classes. Jamie's a pretty good teacher. As the police entered, I watched Elle straighten her shoulders, ready to play her new role. This time maybe as herself. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's showing them a better way to live. 6 months later, I stood in the newly renovated Henderson Clinic, now part of Radiant Transformations. The morning light filtered through the windows, catching on the piece Jamie had created for the reception area. A mosaic of broken mirrors, each fragment reflecting something different. It's about perspective, Jamie explained to Emily Chun as we toured the space. How the same thing can look completely different depending on where you stand. Emily nodded appreciatively. Like how a betrayal can become an opportunity. I touched one of the mirror fragments, seeing my reflection split and reassembled. The woman looking back seemed stronger somehow, more certain. The first patients arrive next week, Emily continued. The waiting list is already full. Turns out, people appreciate honest marketing more than promises of eternal youth. My phone buzzed, a message from Clara. Richard moved out yesterday. Finally took your advice about not settling for perfect lies. Another buzz, Elle. First art show opening tonight. Jamie's been an amazing teacher. Would mean a lot if you came. The last 6 months had transformed all of us. Elle had taken her plea deal, trading testimony about the fraud for a fresh start. She'd discovered her talent for abstract art, turning manipulation into creation. Clara had found her voice, speaking truth instead of maintaining peace. And Nate, Mrs. Brooks. Sarah, our original receptionist who'd chosen to follow me to the new clinic, appeared at my elbow. There's a delivery for you. The envelope was heavy, expensive, like the paper Elle used to write her love letters on. Inside was a letter from Nate's rehabilitation facility in Arizona. You don't have to read it, Jamie said quietly. But I did. I owed myself that much. Marley, it began. The desert has a way of stripping everything down to essentials. No distractions, no masks, no comfortable lies. I've been thinking about legacy. Not the kind I thought I needed. The awards, the reputation, the desperate grab at youth. But the real kind. The lives we touch, the truth we choose to tell, the strength we find in starting over. You were always the stronger one. I see that now. While I was chasing mirrors, you were building something real. I'm sorry it took losing everything to understand that. The clinic will thrive under your vision. It always did, even when I was too blind to see it. Elle told me about her art show. About how you helped her find her real talent instead of destroying her. That's your true legacy, seeing the best in people, even when they fail to see it in themselves. I won't ask for forgiveness. Some bridges stay burned. But I wanted you to know, you taught me more by walking away than I learned in 32 years of standing still. I folded the letter carefully, tucking it into my blazer pocket. Emily and Jamie watched, waiting for a reaction. The Henderson board meeting starts in 10 minutes, Emily reminded me gently. Actually, I said, I think I'll skip it. There's an art show I need to attend tonight. Jamie's face broke into a smile. Elle will be nervous. She could use some support. We all could back then. I looked around the clinic, my clinic now, built on honesty instead of illusion. Sometimes support means showing people who they can become, not punishing them for who they were. As we walked out, I caught one final reflection in Jamie's mosaic. All of us, fractured but whole, broken but rebuilt. Different, but somehow better. Ready for your next chapter? Emily asked. I thought about Nate's letter, about Elle's show, about Clara's newfound courage. About how revenge had twisted itself into redemption when I wasn't looking. Actually, I smiled. I think this is just the beginning. Sometimes the best endings aren't really endings at all. They're just better beginnings, viewed through fragments of who we used to be, reflecting who we might become.